Movies. You either love them or you hate them. I myself tend to love most movies, even when they are crap. A reviewer close to me said that she would never give 0 stars to a movie because there has been time and effort put into that production. I have now taken this on board and believe that no movie should score less than half a star. And tonight we're going to continue in defence of. In 1978, a movie came along that changed the course of movies for the better. It claimed the viewer would believe a man can fly. It was arguably the first accurate adaptation of a comic book movie character to have been undertaken. I am of course talking about Superman the movie. It was a feat to produce this film. The special effects needed to pull this film off were in their infancy. Ilya and Alexander Salkind bought the rights to Superman in 1974, and after numerous scripts, Richard Donner was hired to direct. Donner began to direct 2 Superman movies back to back, but due to timing and escalating production budgets, Donner was only able to finish the first film. Richard Lester was brought on to direct the sequel. Fortunately, we got Donner's vision of the sequel with the release of the Donner Cut not so many years ago. Superman the movie was a massive success, and it was successful monetarily and received nominations from both Academy Awards and the British Academy Film Awards, with Christopher Reeve winning Best Newcomer. Even Superman creators Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster gave a positive reaction, with Shuster saying, "He was delighted to see Superman on the screen. I got chills. Chris Reeve has just the right touch of humour. He really is Superman." As a success, and as there were already 2 movies planned, it was inevitable that a 3rd film would be produced. Like Superman 2, there was a massive box office drop from the first film. The problem is that there is a tonal difference between Donner and Lester. Lester had increased the comedy elements of the film. It was only slight in Superman 2, but when Lester made Superman 3, it was basically a Richard Pryor comedy with Superman in it. There are elements in Superman 3 that are good though, including that always scared me as a child, but it was a massive drop from Superman and Superman 2. Superman 3 was the last film to be produced by the Salkinds, and the rights were bought by low-budget movie producers Cannon Films. They produced movies such as Masters of the Universe, Death Wish, and the action movies of Chuck Norris.
If you come back in here, I'm going to hit you with so many rights, you're going to beg for a left.
That's right. If Superman the movie would make you believe a man can fly, Superman 4 The Quest for Peace would make you believe a film can be made for under a $5. Superman is requested by a schoolboy who is extremely badly dubbed to rid the world of nuclear weapons. Superman seeks advice from the Fortress of Solitude and is told to allow the humans to solve their own problems. He's also told that he should maybe perhaps visit new worlds where war has been outlawed. Now just imagine the possibilities of that. They actually thought about it. A minor plot was that the Daily Planet had been bought out by a tabloid tycoon, David Warfield. His intent was to dumb down the Daily Planet, reducing it to tabloid news. Perry White, here again played by Jackie Cooper, is fired as editor, and Warfield's daughter Lacey is installed as the new editor. Lacey takes a liking to Clark, and hijinks ensue when he has to meet both Lacey and Lois as both Superman and Clark at the same time. Oh, how we laughed. But seriously, Reeve's comic timing is actually spot on.
Lacey? Wait a minute.
Oh, Clark.
Stop.
Another subplot is that Martha Kent has died, meaning that Kent Farm is up for sale. Clark refuses to sell to a mall developer and discovers a MacGuffin in his capsule. It is a bright green crystal, as they all are, and it has a message from his mother Lara. Gene Hackman returns as Lex Luthor. He is freed from prison by his dim-witted nephew Lenny Luthor, here played by John Cryer. Have we seen him before? Maybe. Luthor's plan is to use a strand of Superman's hair mixed with some of his own DNA to create a foe that is as powerful as Superman. Superman sends all the nuclear weapons into the sun, and in one of the missiles, the genetic matrix that Lex Luthor has produced is also in there. Once it explodes in the sun, it grows and becomes Nuclear Man. Nice side note is that there was supposed to be a first Nuclear Man who was supposed to be played by Clive Mantle. The original idea was to have a Bizarro-style Nuclear Man that was quickly defeated by Superman. Then afterwards, Lex Luthor decides to put the Matrix in a nuclear weapon which is destined for the sun, and it makes him more powerful. This is where the decreased budget affects the story. The first time since Superman 2, Superman is actually threatened by a villain who has equal powers. But the effects are at best laughable, with extremely bad blue screen flight sequences that were better 10 years prior. There are extremely bad choreographed fight sequences that are slow and, to be honest, extremely boring. When they first meet, the Statue of Liberty is moved and thrown into the city, but Superman stops it and places it back where it belongs. There is then an awkward sequence where Nuclear Man's nails grow, and he uses them to scratch Superman. Superman is visibly hurt, and then we get a nice sequence where his cloak falls to the ground. Superman is then dying of radiation sickness, but luckily he has a MacGuffin that he found earlier. I told he would come back to it. The power crystal is able to heal Superman, but as mentioned, that's it now. That's his last life. There's no coming back from this. God, this story goes on forever. Nuclear Man takes a liking to Lacey and takes her into space. Just let that sink in. He takes a human into space and she survives. Superman fights him in space and on the moon, but then he resorts to having to move the moon in the way of the sun, so it takes away Nuclear Man's power. At the same time, half of Earth is destroyed. Well, it would have been. At the end of the fight, Nuclear Man is placed into a nuclear power plant, and the grid rises because there's so much power. You see, it's a joke. It's a joke, you see. To wrap up, Perry White gets a loan to buy the controlling interest in the newspaper, and Lex Luthor is returned to prison. The story could have been great. It has a good premise, but the execution stops it from being good. It's a shame because it has a good message of world peace, but it's difficult to look past the negatives, and there are a hell of a lot of negatives. But I suppose this is why we make this show. Ask anyone who their favourite Superman is, and the vast majority will say Christopher Reeve. He was excellent in the role. He portrayed Superman and Clark Kent completely differently, and to a point where he honestly looks as though he is a different person. Kent is bumbling, clumsy, and oblivious to the world around him, whereas his Superman is the complete antithesis of this. He is confident, cool, and controlled. When he's around, you know that the situation is being handled. Nothing can be said against Christopher Reeve Superman, apart from that he was held back by the technology of the time. Lex and Lenny Luthor are played by Gene Hackman and John Cryer, and they're the bad guys. Again, they're played for laughs, which has always slightly annoyed me about this version of Luthor. Out of all the people who've played a live-action Luthor, I think Smallville's Michael Rosenbaum has been one of the best. Gene Hackman was okay, and he would have been able to play it better if he wasn't so comedic, but he was never used to his full potential. Kevin Spacey was playing the same Luthor, But again, he seemed like he was in a completely different film, so there was no continuation there. And the less said about Jesse Eisenberg, the better. Lois Lane is again played by the late Margot Kidder. Her role after the first two movies was significantly reduced, only appearing at the beginning and the end of Superman 3. Her role in Quest for Peace is slightly increased, being the one to inspire Superman to restore his health. But it seemed at this point that Lois wasn't really needed in these films anymore. Set design and effects of this film is downright atrocious. You can see the budget being slashed as the film goes on. Superman gains a new power, which is being able to rebuild the Great Wall of China using only his eyes. This is like Star Trek original series levels of budget constraints. It would have been okay if, instead of using beams from his eyes, why not just use like a speed effect where he's moving really fast and you can see loads of him and the wall is being fixed. It would have been better and made more sense. But the biggest telltale sign that this movie had been cobbled together using the change you find down the back of your settee is that it was filmed in none other than, drumroll, Milton Keynes. Let that sink in. Milton Keynes. There's a scene that shows Superman flying to the United Nations building, which is situated on 42nd Street in New York. But the scene was filmed in an industrial park in Milton Keynes. But this quote from Christopher Reeve's autobiography, Still Me, explains just that. Arguably, you can tell that this film was filmed everywhere other than New York City. Everything about it is cheap, but the story could have been salvageable. Christopher Reeve's portrayal of Superman is still good. It's just a shame that the execution was less than good. There is a shot of Superman flying towards the camera that is used and reused again and again and again and again and again and again. It shows how the effects budget had been whittled away, leaving them with nothing but scraps and possibly copies from the old movies, scraps from the other movies. This marked the last film of Christopher Reeve's portrayal of Superman. There were plans for another movie starring Reeve. The rights had been reverted back to the Salkinds as Cannon had filed for bankruptcy. The story was to follow Superman into the shrunken bottled city of Kandor, dying and being resurrected. Unfortunately, due to his paralysis in 1995, these plans had to be shelved. That's not to say there weren't ideas and plans being made for the character of Superman. Other projects included Superman Reborn, which came out off the back of the Death of Superman comic and saw Superman fight against Doomsday. This was when Kevin Smith was brought on to rewrite. Smith got a second chance to write for Superman Lives, which starred Nicolas Cage as Superman and was to be directed by Tim Burton. But this has been documented in the great documentary by the late John Schnepp, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened. So watch that. There was a Batman vs Superman movie that is referenced in I Am Legend that was under consideration, and J.J. Abrams' Superman Flyby. But Reeve's Superman legacy came full circle with Superman Returns, which became a sequel to Superman 2, completely eradicating Superman 3 and 4. It would be interesting to see whether this film would work better if it could be, say, remastered with new CGI or turned into an animated movie using the same recordings and likenesses of the characters. Could the film be salvaged using animation to make the set pieces appear better? There's no way of knowing, but just imagine an animated film starring Christopher Reeve's Superman. I think that would be absolutely amazing. The conclusion of this is that it is the fourth and final film of Christopher Reeve and was set back with budget constraints, and this seems to be the biggest reason for the shortfall. If looking only at the story, it's actually no different to that of The Dark Knight Rises. The hero is beaten by a stronger foe. The hero fights his way back. Simple story, which is easy to do. The title Quest for Peace and the message within the movie is also something that is worth a point or two. It's a message that is still sorely needed today. One thing this film does that a lot of films don't do is that they capture the character of Superman fairly perfectly. At the end of this film, Superman has learned something. He learns that he can't force his beliefs onto the world, as he states that there will be peace when the people
of the world
want it so badly
that their governments will have no choice but to give it to them. I just wish you could all see the Earth the way that I see it. Because when you...
I think the wise words from a film that isn't looked on fondly. He has learnt that he can help humanity, but it's down to humanity to make the first move to peace. For all that is wrong with this film, it's clear that they captured the character of Superman, and it's understandable why Christopher Reeve is seen as the quintessential Superman. Have you any thoughts on Superman 4: The Quest for Peace? Is this the worst Superman film ever made? Do you think this film could have been received better if the budget was increased? Let me know in the comments below. Please share and like these videos because that would help me, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will hopefully see you next week. If you have any suggestions for films that deserve defending, let me know at madmoviepod@gmail.com. That's MAAD moviepod@gmail.com. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next week.